that's a given. So for him to kind of speak that into that makes us very yeah.
I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. We start out with invocation and pledge of allegiance. If you all stand, Supervisor Gould will lead us in prayer.
If you'll join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you and praise you for this day that you've given us, Lord, in this great nation and county that you've given us, Lord. Give us the wisdom to govern it wisely, Lord. Watch over our workers, Lord, as many of them have dangerous jobs. Bring them home safely to their families' loving arms. Watch over our sheriff's deputies and our firefighters, Lord. Bring them home to their loving families' arms, Lord. And we ask all these things in the blessed name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorneys on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A, 3, 4, and 7. Motion and action to call for an executive session to be held February 21st, 2023 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03, A, 3, 4, and 7 to discuss items noticed on the agenda within asterisk. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
With that motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Official business to come before the board. Discussion of pending or contemplated litigation, claims, and demands. Attorney Esplin?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you. Committee and or legislative reports. Supervisor Bishop.
Let me see, this past couple of weeks, I was rather busy. I attended the White Hills community meeting with our county department heads, Tammy Ursenbach, Steve Lukowski, several other directors for the community. And then on the 18th and 19th, I attended the CSA legislative reception in downtown Phoenix. The following day, I then attended the County Supervisors Association Executive Board meeting, followed by the Board of Directors meeting. Then the following day, I attended the Arizona Association of County Officials, and that was a virtual meeting. And the 23rd, I chaired the Board of Health meeting. And a couple days later, I attended virtually the West Kingman Interchange presentation. And then, of course, there was the workforce development meeting. I was asked to chair the CSA LPC meeting on the 27th, and then the LPC meeting the following week on February 3rd. That's all.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. I too attended a meeting for CSA. It was also a reception where we got to meet and speak with our legislators, which is always a good thing. So we know who to talk to when we want to tell them to stop doing what they're doing. And the LPC Recap Legislative Policy Committee that I'm a part of at CSA. Today, I believe, is the 27th day of the session. As of today, there are 1,328 bills, 609 in the House and 719 in the Senate, with 90 memorials and resolutions. The deadline for Senate bills has passed, and tomorrow is the deadline for the House. So I'm sure we'll see another 1,000. So if you might be reading in the paper some of the things that are going on, predicting that they will have some problems, the Republican majority with the Democrat governor. They are trying to get a skinny bill passed. What that is, the baseline budget from last year with no added, goodies like they do every year. And then when that's done, then they'll fight it out for the money that's left. And there's a lot of money, so there'll be a lot of fighting. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I'm not really sure that this governor is going to go for that, but we'll see. I think that they're predicting it's going to be a long session, but we'll see about that. There's a lot of bills coming down the pike, obviously, and I say 1,300, but those won't be the final numbers and what will even be heard. That's just all of them together. There are a lot of election integrity bills, some of them kind of watered down versions of last session. Again, I don't predict to see much activity there. I do think that even if they're passed, they'll probably get vetoed by the governor, but hope springs eternal. We'll see about that. There are some bills that will affect counties, and we're watching those, and we will report to you. Some tax bills as well that seem a little far-fetched, but we'll figure that out too. So I'll keep you posted, and if there's anything that I believe that the public should get engaged with, there are ways to do it, and I will let you know, or you can always contact me and ask me. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Johnson?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the workforce development meeting electronically. They've got some things that would be coming our way in the near future. And I just wanted to let you all know that I agree with Supervisor Angus. It'll be a long session in the legislature. And I've got June 30th as my day in the Sine Die pool because that's the last day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor. This morning, I'll just add a few water-related updates. House Bill 2372, which is a prohibition of fourth priority Colorado River water transfers, has been dropped by our own Representative Leo Biasucci. And that proposes no more Colorado River transfers, fourth priority Colorado River transfers from our Colorado River communities in the west to east and central Arizona until the lake level at Lake Mead rises above 1090. And anybody that's been following the lake levels, they're estimating it could get as low or lower than 1040 by March of this year. So we'll be watching that bill. Also, the Senate bill, Sonny Borelli has dropped Senate Bill 1306, I believe is the number. Formerly in prior sessions, this legislation we referred to as rural management area legislation, looking to secure additional protections for rural groundwater aquifers. This year it's called local groundwater stewardship areas. So Sonny has introduced the Senate version. Leo Biasucci has held a couple of meetings. There's a meeting this afternoon down at the state capitol. And the House version should be dropped here very shortly for that legislation. So we'll be watching those very closely. Mojave County is involved on both of those fronts. Also, those of you that have been watching what the Bureau of Reclamation is doing regarding following up on their last June I guess, request to the 7 basin states to cut between 2 to 4 million acre feet of Colorado River water a year. They've accepted now 2 plans this last week towards that conservation. 6 of the 7 basin states, Arizona included, submitted a joint plan to the Bureau of Reclamation last week with some ideas on how to get to some of that conservation required. California went on its own and submitted its own plan with its own set of guidelines that would have Arizona and Nevada take off most of their water use and leave California alone. So we'll see how that goes. We've also seen some pretty good media coverage with water-related stuff, being that it's only the first part of February. You know, we've already seen some water-related articles that Mojave County has had a voice in, and some of the other rural counties, Coconino, Yavapai, La Paz, some of the areas down south. There was some articles in the Arizona Republic. The British Broadcasting Company or Corporation did a radio segment on the Colorado River transfer stuff that's going on right now. CNN has done a big story recently, just this last weekend, on the groundwater issues that we're involved in, and I believe the Arizona Capital Times is doing a series of articles on rural groundwater as well. So we're going to keep up that advocacy. So that's all I've got there. County Manager's report.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. I have one item this morning. As you know, House Bill 2862 appropriated state funds for the purpose of providing one-time retention and recruitment for eligible sheriff deputies and detention officers in FY23. The retention of $10,000 over 8 equal quarterly installments, and the recruitment of $5,000 over 4 equal quarterly installments. For your information, and as of Friday, February 3rd, Mojave County eligible sheriff deputies and detention officers received up to 3 quarters worth of payments for a total of $583,750, and that went to 146 employees who received the retention payment and 19 received the recruitment payment.
Thank you, Sam. Approval of the December 5th, 2022 and January 3rd, 2023 BOS meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
You've heard that motion. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Call to the public. Chris Rodardi.
Morning, Chris Rodardi, Mojave County taxpayer. Once again, today's agenda is rich with federal wealth redistribution schemes that steal from the rich, that's taxpayers like you and me, and give to the poor. As we have seen over the past 60 years, this mentality serves to strangle the middle class while subjugating those in poverty. This certainly was not the intent of our founding fathers. Sadly, we are descending into a socialist pit from which we may never emerge. 3 short years ago, which seems like an eternity, America stood on much firmer ground. On February 4th, 2020, we heard optimism and hope delivered by America's last great president, and I quote, "America is a land of heroes. This is a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. And ladies and gentlemen, our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history. And we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world. And we changed history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come." End quote. And thank you, President Donald J. Trump. Today, I pray this can still ring true, and it's up to office holders like you, right here in Mojave County, Arizona, to honor your oaths of office and follow the Constitution and protect our God-given rights. And you can start today. by saying no to items 11, 12, and 13. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Wayne Hollins.
Good morning, Wayne Holland from Golden Valley. I attended a composting conference in Ontario on January 25th and 26th. Surprisingly, there was 1,480 other people there to talk about composting. I was utterly amazed at that. It also brings about that, what are we doing other than sending stuff to the landfill and burying it out there to make more methane gas? Why don't we use our chipper and chip wood, make some easier to people to make compost? Compost will put that organic material into the ground, which allows our water to infiltrate into the ground instead of running off over the top of it. You can drive down most any road out here after it rains, and several weeks afterwards, and you have puddles, if not in the road, beside the road, because there's nothing in there to let the water infiltrate into the ground. Instead, it just sits there and evaporates and doesn't do much good. Helps in the future for rain to the east of us, but other than that, not much. I've read all the articles and stuff like that, and that's all good talk. I still see no doing with our local people on low impact development. There's no promoting to do that. There's nobody's went out there and looked around the neighborhoods and seen what could be done there. We have no tanks, gutters, or anything on government buildings and parks and recreation. The water just falls on the ground and runs off. When do we set the example? When do we teach the people what to do? We got the manual. I don't know if anybody's ever pulled it off and read it, but the first few pages before you even get to the part on how to do the stuff is interesting. Has the fiscal benefits of doing those projects for the people. Most of the time I feel, and I'm sure other people feel that way, that the government does things to us and for us, but hardly ever with us. We have a problem with water, and we talk about it a lot. When are we to do something? I've been waiting for 2 or 3 years. Water is a priority. What, talking about water? I know we got some projects coming up, but those leave a little to be desired too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Devin Cantarano.
Good morning, Chairman and board members. I'm here today. I'm a resident of the LeClaire subdivision down in Fort Mojave, and we've had a long, outstanding problem with code enforcement in our neighborhood, and it has gotten to the point where the people who are violating these codes are now getting brave enough to start talking and threatening neighbors and talking as if the property that they enter their property through an easement is part of theirs. They own it. They set up gates there. They're there in RVs still. I've been to this board meeting 3 years ago, talked about it. I got 1 day of service out of the county because of it. Code enforcement, building department, building officials, fire department, and sheriff's department all showed up the day after I came to this meeting. And we figured out that there was several code violations, and due to RVs just being camped and lived out of, along with, you know, many druggies and thieves and just lowlifes into our neighboring properties. Unfortunately, that all soon spills into our own property. People have come onto my property uninvited and looking for things to steal. And today I'm here to say that this has got to change because, one, my family, I have a 9-year-old daughter, she doesn't even feel safe to go out in her own yard anymore. And when she talked to me about that, I was very disturbed that this county collects our taxes and doesn't provide the community and the citizens the protection that's needed. The Sheriff's Department has been over to one of the known locations. They've recovered 2 stolen vehicles right out of the front yard. There in turn, when they were doing this, I was talking to them about everything that goes on there, which is drug dealing, theft, prostitution, you name it, it's all going on there. You wouldn't believe it until you come and visit my house, which I invite all you members to come on over and visit my house. Let's take a drive around my little neighborhood there and see what's going on. Even come over, have a barbecue on a Friday night and see after the sun goes down what starts happening in the neighboring properties. It's pretty disturbing. I've made several complaints to code enforcement, and this is just not going anywhere. They keep saying they're doing this, they've sent letters, they've done this, they've done that. They live in RVs. It's an AR1 is what it's zoned as, and nowhere in the zoning says that is allowed. So I'd appreciate if the supervisor, Ron, we've talked. I talked to you, Valerie, down there about a month ago. I thought we were going to get this going, and it's just not moving. The guy threatened my family, the one that I told you've got to leave because I am tired of you guys coming in and out all night, all hours of the night, waking us up and everything, and nothing's been done. The sheriffs need to do their jobs as well. Like I said, there's 2 cars stolen, recovered out of the front yard. They take items out of it and give it to the people that live there. Nothing's ever heard again. They need to get search warrants and take care of these things because us citizens that pay the taxes to pay their check, we're not getting our service.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thomas Bond.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day today. And I am Thomas Bond, and I recently moved to the Golden Valley area. All of you do know me, but I'm just restating. It's been a while since I've been here. Had an illness, unfortunately, over the holiday season, but I'm doing a lot better. But I still have been working underground and moving forward with the positive development of not just Mojave County, but also Arizona. Our gentleman that just spoke, very good points, and I'm going to bring up some good points just as a update for everyone. What's going on is our main focus, or my main focus, is Golden Valley and economic development, because in these really tough times and these political hard times that we're all going through, we have to concentrate as well on the positive. And I'm working with Tammy and Gina from the Economic Development Department, in touch with them. They have been great. They have been doing community outreach in not just Golden Valley, but other areas of Mojave County, and it's really been successful. Wayne, obviously, Hollins came on board, and he's doing really some wonderful stuff with permaculture and trying to reclaim water in the Golden Valley area. But I just wanted to let everyone know that we are still involved, and I'm still involved, and gearing back up again for economic development. We have a meeting with Tammy and Gina, and my main focus again is Golden Valley, but hopefully it will also affect Lake Havasu and other areas of the county to bring business in. He contacted me, Matt Jones, with the Film Commission. We had a great discussion on bringing film production into Arizona and possibly to Golden Valley to bring jobs in and to be able to have a good economy there so it grows, so we have a good positive community in that area. And like I said, that's my main goal. So this is just an update. I wanted to thank you all very much. Wonderful job. And we will talk to you next month, and I'll be able to, like I said, I'll let you know what's going on with bringing Arizona in these hard times back to the forefront again, and especially, as I said, I'm prejudiced, the Golden Valley area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We had a request to speak on a consent item. I'm going to bring them up during call to the public because there's no guarantee that that item would be pulled. Tanya Dowsand.
Good morning, Tanya Dawson, Mojave County taxpayer. Just a couple weeks ago, the Department of Housing and Urban Development proposed a new rule in an effort to ensure that the state and local governments are meeting their obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. HUD is taking affirmatively furthering fair housing to a whole new level. HUD now wants to work race into every aspect of housing in order to promote integration. Demetria McCain, who's in charge of fair housing, said today HUD is taking new bold action to eliminate historic patterns of segregation that continue to harm American families. Under the proposed law, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge, will require those involved with HUD grants to consider race in order to overcome patterns of segregation. The Civil Rights Act already forbids the consideration of race in any aspect of real estate, including lending, renting, building maintenance, foreclosure, etc. There's nothing in the Civil Rights Act of 1968 about ending segregation. The Civil Rights Act talks about discrimination, not segregation. Under the proposed rule, state and local governments would be required to submit equity plans to HUD every 5 years, detailing their analysis and strategies to combat fair housing problems in their communities. They may even be required to track patterns of segregation and poverty with a checklist of 92 questions to receive federal housing grants. Please reject HUD grants. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we're going to move into the consent agenda. Supervisor Bishop, would you like to remove any items this morning?
No, thank you.
Supervisor Angus?
Item 12.
Supervisor Gould?
Nothing today, sir.
Supervisor Johnson?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 12.
So moved.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
As appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Item 12, Supervisor Angus?
Thank you. Is someone here? So this one that I took out for those who are watching, approve the funding agreement between the state of Arizona Department of Housing and Mojave County for a contract providing grant funds in the amount of $218,745 for the Housing for Person with AIDS, AIDS program, HAPWA, for the period of November 1st, 2022 to June 20th, 2025. Is this a, and I know there was like 48 pages, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't read it, but I just have some certain questions. Is this has been an ongoing program, I assume, since, you know, AIDS was a real problem, which it, you know, for the people who have it, it is, but it isn't what it was, you know, back in the 80s or whenever the heck that was, right? So who qualifies for this? This is free housing for people with AIDS, and I've never heard this ongoing. I don't remember seeing this as an ongoing program. So do we have people who already get this grant, this money from this grant here in Mojave County? Or do they live somewhere and then they can get it, or it's money to put them up? I have no idea.
Chairman Lincolnfelter, Supervisor Angus, this program's been going on since 2006. It's been a continuous program that has been brought to the Board of Supervisors. And yes, the people that have been identified, or I'm sorry, that have applied for these funds do currently live in Mojave County.
Can you give us a report? I know you can't give names or HIPAA laws, you know, whatever. How many people take advantage of this?
Chairman Lincolnfelter, Supervisor Angus, I definitely could get back to you in regards to those numbers.
And how do people find out about this? Because there are HIPAA law, you know, rules, HIPAA violations. So if you can't just, are they like in doctor's offices? Or, I mean, I've never seen anything, but of course I'm, you know, probably wouldn't. I'm just curious, because it seems, and Chris said it earlier, that these programs go on and on and on, when maybe the necessity isn't really there. I mean, AIDS, as horrible as it is, when you get it, they can control it now. It isn't like it was. It's not, doesn't have this stigma. Maybe back when it started, 2006, that was way after as well. Again, I don't understand. Is it just, if you have AIDS, do they take into consideration your financial? Do you know?
Chairman Lincolnfelter, Supervisor Angus, we do look at all the applications, and there is a process to go through for that. I definitely could help provide those numbers and the way that applications attained. In regards to where AIDS currently is at, I'm not a health professional and would not want to speak on that matter, but I would defer to the...
But is there an income threshold they have to match?
Chairman Lincolnfelter, Supervisor Angus, I believe there is, and I could provide that information to you.
So out of this money, how much of this money goes towards staff?
Chairman Lincolnfelter, Supervisor Angus, that's another question that I can go through, but most of all of our programs, really the majority of it is for administration, and it's all paid for programming, so it's actually staff working within the program. So when you look at how much funding it is, each of it's based upon the FTEs and that in the department, and if you like, I can provide that to you as well.
Yeah, can I, Mr. Chairman, can we just continue this to next? I do really want some more information on this. Again, you know, it just seems like one of those things that I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, that maybe the county gets more money out of this than people who actually have AIDS. So I just want that information. I hope I'm wrong.
If there's no other questions on the item, Supervisor Johnson, there's no question?
I believe in the contract there's a percentage that is all we're allowed to take. It's a small percentage.
Small percentage.
For administrative fees. I don't know. Mr. Esplin, do you know?
Don't. Supervisor Angus, if you're looking to continue it, I'm open to a motion.
Yes, I make a motion to continue this item 12 to our next meeting.
Second.
Heard that motion in second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Thank you. Item 56. Approve the list of projects presented for application for Water Infrastructure Finance Authority Water Conservation Grant Funds in the order of priority presented and approved in concept, the possible funding sources identified along with any other future funding opportunities that may become available. County Manager Elters, who's going to be presenting on this?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I will provide a brief update since Tim is traveling for county business, and if you have any additional question, Paul Bogman is here to help answer them. This item is basically just a follow-up to the last board meeting where this discussion took place. The board is aware that the state has funding in the order of $200 million in the WIFA program, and WIFA stands for the Water Infrastructure Financing Act. These dollars are made available for 6 eligible categories, and the water recharge groundwater recharge is one of those categories. So the board had requested staff work on a list of projects that would be viable so the board can take a look at it and bless it. And that's what we have in front of you. We've identified 9 different projects, have ranked them in such a way that the first project provide the largest return on investment. And we've estimated the total cost of those projects to be in the $22 million range. The funding program requires a 10% match. For that match, we anticipate variable sources be used to cover it, such as flood control district, partnering with the city of Kingman, where it does make sense because these projects are common to unincorporated area as well as city of Kingman, as well as private sector partnership where that also is viable and makes sense. So it is here for you to hopefully approve it so we can proceed accordingly and work with the program administrator to pursue some of those funds for our projects. Thank you.
Any questions for County Manager or Realtors? Supervisor Bishop?
I don't have any questions at all. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished by prioritizing these projects, and I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
I would like to ask just a couple of questions to Sam. Sam, I know that you have spoken to, I believe, WIFA personnel. They held a seminar and you had some questions. Have we heard anything back? Well, first of all, do you know what the per project cap is for recharge, the recharge category? And have you heard back anything from the WIFA folks on the question regarding the per project cap for recharge projects?
Mr. Chairman, board members, what you're referring to is a training seminar that was provided last week. I attended it for Mojave County. The presentation that was the information that was shared highlighted two different paths, one for the program funding and one for project funding. The program funding max was $3 million. The project funding was $250,000 per project. This was for the 6 total categories that include limiting or eliminating leakage in water sources and cleaning water sources, enhancing it, and then recharging. My concern is that the limit of 250 is very low and you can't really do a whole lot with it. So I followed up with the WIFA program administrator right after, left a message letting them know that we have some concerns. We would like to follow through or follow up and find out where those caps came from, and have not heard back. So I'm committed to following up with them, getting an answer, and if the opportunity presents itself, ask him to take further look at it. For the record, Mr. Chairman and board members, last Friday, February 3rd, we had the county managers meeting at CSA. Supervisor Klein from Yuma was present. He is on the board. I made the comments there that I'm making here about my concern for the cap. Both he and Craig Sullivan took note of it, said they would also follow up with WIFA, ask them to revisit that, and that they would help us get the message across. So we'll follow up, and I'll be happy to let you know, let the board know if they make any changes. I hope you do approve this item today so we can proceed, but we'll pursue a flexibility that will allow us to advance some of our projects, because our projects, as you can tell by this list, cost a lot more than the $250,000.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate your hard work on this, and hopefully we're able to have some additional input on that. The $250,000 project cap for recharge won't get us very far, that's for sure. And I know that we have a lot of work to do. Also, just to make note, I believe that we're of the understanding that the WIFA expansion that was passed through the Arizona legislature and the governor's office last year, in that legislation, you basically had to be able to guarantee that if money were to be allocated to a project, that the project, you had to somehow guarantee or assure that the project was going to be able to do what it was supposed to do. And without the INA determination that we received late last year in December from ADWR, that we may not even be eligible for some of these recharge projects. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, board members, yes. The legislation will require conditions that will ensure that effort to recharge the groundwater table are not undermined by unlimited pumping capabilities. So the INA provides provides the buffers within the terms and conditions of an INA for that purpose. So yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that the public understands and sees that all of our past efforts and combined with this effort, the county and the city in this area are doing everything within their circle of control to be a part of a solution. So I appreciate your effort. I think we have a motion in. Do we have a second? Oh, excuse me. Wayne Hollins, please come up.
Thank you again, sorry about that, but I had a question on how far the water's coming downstream until it gets to any of those points of collection. And $22 million for several hundred acre feet of infiltration seems awful expensive to me. And being if we can't get the funding for that, if you notice, Mojave County have no flowing streams year-round or even partially year-round, except when we do get a monsoon, and then it's all done within a few hours. So again, if we go way up in the mountains and put in them little one-rock dams and check dams and stuff coming down, that'll infiltrate the water into the aquifer, and also it'll rehydrate the ground on the way down, and you could eventually get some flow, at least seasonal flow, instead of a few hours of flow. So just because we can't get $22 million, I think 400 or 500 acre feet is not anywhere close to what we were short. I think it was like 30,000 acre feet we were short just in the Wallapai Basin. So again, are we going to wait? Or are we going to do something? While we're waiting, 2 years ago, we could have already had that stuff built, and for a heck of a lot less than $22 million. So how far is that coming? Because it's doing nothing to control the flooding upstream, only downstream from these structures. So if it's coming from miles, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to know when people blowing smoke. So can we consider doing other things while we're doing that, while we're waiting on money? Thank you.
Mr. Hollins, I have a question for you. I believe you're involved with the Big Sandy Natural Resource Conservation Area, is that correct?
Yes.
So I hear this term check dams all the time. Now, if you look in state statute, the purpose of a natural resource conservation area one of the main purposes, if not the single purpose, is to write applications and grants and get federal funding to allocate towards projects like this. I'd like to ask what the Natural Resource Conservation District is doing to put in check dams, to go after these federal funds as an entity and do some of these projects that you're talking about.
Yes, they do, and they have identified 5 places to put in check dams up higher into the drainages, but putting in 5 check dams is not, it's like putting in filtration dam at the bottom of 5 miles of coming downhill. You got to put in a big check dam, because when the water hits that, what it's going to do is it's going to blow it out. So unless you slow the water down before it gets there, why do they want to waste money on check dams? I've asked them that myself, so I'm still trying to figure out. They are doing something. It's not necessarily what my research have said is the best thing to be doing at the time, but at least they considered doing something, and they have put in for funding and stuff for that, and they've had people on the ground to look at that. So yes, they are doing stuff. They need to do more.
As far as Mojave County's efforts and the City of Kingman's efforts, and perhaps Sam, you may have something to say on this, but I think that we're doing everything within our circle of control, certainly going after these recharge projects. I know that the City of Kingman has done several different things. They've done an active recharge well at their wastewater treatment plant. They've done dry wells. They've done passive recharge projects. They're looking at all sorts of other different things. And we're also currently working with Representative John Gillette to actually go after a one-time appropriation for a recharge project in the Kingman area. I think it's the Mojave Wash, Rattlesnake Wash Confluence recharge site. Is that accurate, Sam?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is.
So I'm not sure if you're going to offer anything else, but we are doing, the county and the city are doing something.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do have additional comment or two for you and the board. These 9 locations were selected specifically based on geology in considering what we heard from our local geologist in the interview that he conducted, and it's posted on county website. We're looking at the project that is listed at the top is a project where the Mojave Wash and the Rattlesnake Wash, which carries during a rainfall event a lot of runoff, where the 2 converge is our first project. We also have projects up in the foothills of the mountains, both of the Wallapies and the Surbat, on the west side of town, to intercept the runoff, the water, and recharge it at location where you have alluvial fan, according to the geologist, where it's more likely to re-enter and seep into the ground table. The reason these recharge projects are expensive is because you have to drill wells to get it back past the caliche in the area. So just digging a basin, a shallow one, on top of the surface and allowing water to pond, according to him, not me, him meaning the geologist, you end up experiencing a lot more water evaporation and very little percolation into the ground. So these sites are really based on the science that we have to get the best return on our investment.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mr. Hollins, for your comments. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yep. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes appear to have it. Do you have it? So ordered. Item 57, Director Latosky.
Good
morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. This item was continued from the January 3rd meeting and considers the abandonment at the applicant's offer the full appraised value of $55,000 of a portion of Columbus Way adjacent to a property that requires this right-of-way for purposes of developing their property. The change from the January meeting is that the Railroad Drive segment on the west side of the property is not being contemplated anymore. The applicant determined that he does not require that right-of-way for his property development. Staff does recommend moving ahead with the abandonment acceptance at the 100% full appraised value of $55,000.
Pleasure of the board. Supervisor Bishop.
I will make a motion that we approve the adoption of resolution number 2023-002 as written.
Second.
For that motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Item 58, Director Latoski.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, item 58 is merely an acceptance and a referral to staff for further study and report back to the Board of Supervisors on a petition to establish South Lavoy-Finicum Road as a county highway. The intent of the applicants would be for the county to expend HERF monies, its own transportation funds, for the future improvement of Lavoy-Finicum Road. I will preface that Lavoy-Finicum Road, it's in the Arizona Strip area. It ties into Cane Beds Road, which is actually in that vicinity of the Rosie Canyon Road area. It is a local road, would not serve regional traffic, but that is something that staff would be looking for and reporting back to the board should the board wish to advance this petition for staff review.
Pleasure of the board. Supervisor Bishop.
I have a question for Mr. Lukowski.
Supervisor Bishop.
So this doesn't serve any regional significance. It's not going to a public area that's used by all the community. It's more or less a residential road.
That is correct, and Supervisor Bishop. It's currently in the county's regular road maintenance system, however, as an unsurfaced roadway.
Okay, so it's in normal maintenance. It gets
correct.
graded every 6 to 8 weeks.
That's correct.
Okay, with that being said, I can't support this. We don't typically declare residential streets as county highways. So if it's under the maintenance system, it's getting graded. I'm okay with that. So I will be. I'll make a motion that we oppose.
Second.
For that motion and second, I have one question for you, Mr. Latoski. This item says it's, to acknowledge and refer the item for review and recommendation. This isn't adopting into the road maintenance. This isn't adopting the road in. It's just a formal review from you and your staff with a formal recommendation that would come back to the board?
Chairman Lingenfelter, that's exactly correct. At this point, staff, as we customarily do, place the petition in front of the board for just an acceptance and referral. So I use the word acceptance kind of strongly there. It's really just a referral back to staff for study. However, this is the opportunity for the board to consider from the airplane view whether or not the petition satisfies some of the objectives of the board that if it were to establish a county highway.
Sure. Well, just for the record, I don't have any problem with having staff give a formal review and a formal opinion to the citizens that live up there. We're not really obligating the county to anything by doing that. But having said that, we do have a motion and a second to deny. All in favor, please say aye.
Chairman Lingenfelter, before we get to that, I just want to clarify, the motion to oppose would be to deny referring it to Public Works. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Esplin. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? No.
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 This is my district. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the acknowledgement and just refer this to the Public Works Department for review and recommendation, formal recommendation for the citizens that live up there.
Second.
For that motion, second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
As appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Item 59, Director Latowski.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, this item is to adopt a resolution to accept about 0.3 miles of North Borough Drive in the Golden Valley area for regular road maintenance. It effectively extends an existing section of maintained road, a very short distance, and staff has made an inspection of the improvements and does recommend the board to accept it for maintenance.
Pleasure of the board.
Chairman Lingenfelter, I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
For that motion, second, Steve, I have just one question. Is this an extension of a residential road, or is this a major thoroughfare?
This is, Chairman Lingenfelter, this is an extension of a residential road.
Got it. For that motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
No. Ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 60, Director Latowski.
Item 60 is another county highway petition, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. Again, this is just an acknowledgement and referral to Public Works for review and recommendation. It concerns Boriana Mine Road, which extends from Alamo Road on northeasterly. The Boriana Mine Road does provide certain access to the Wallapies, kind of the back area of the Wallapies. And I do understand that there are some mining operations in the area as well that are currently utilizing the roadway. So again, the public petition is petitioning the county to consider establishing it as a county highway, generally for the county to have future consideration towards improving the roadway. It is currently maintained by the county in its current unsurfaced condition.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould.
I make a motion that item 60 be adopted.
For that motion, is there a second?
Second.
For that motion, second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
As appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Item 61, Director Latowski.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, this item concerns the ongoing county work to improve and actually construct 3/4 of a mile of Mountain View Road between Aztec Road and Sterling Road. There are 3 private parcels that we need to acquire right away to complete the project. This is the second of the third parcels that we have approached with the appraised value to purchase the right of way at the appraised value. The property owner balked at that proposal and actually asked for some additional funding. The board did not support that and held to the appraised value. So because the property owner is not accepting the appraised value, we are asking the board to consider a condemnation action.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould.
I move that item 61 be adopted.
For that motion.
Second.
For that motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Emergency Management Director Stewart, item 62.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. I've put this item on the agenda. I've been thinking for quite some time that we needed to have clarification in our personnel policies and procedures regarding employee liability and who's covered, who isn't, and with expectations on what needs to take place when we are dealing with situations that could be potentially hazardous. So I'm not going to read all of the individual items, but I wanted to clarify in this addition to the personnel policies and procedures that our officials and our employees are covered, obviously for injury and for liability by the Arizona County Insurance Pool. That is with the expectation that they are in fact complying as reasonably as possible with all the safety rules and regulations that the county have in place. So that is one thing we want to make clear. Our employees, having worked with them for many years, are very safety conscious, and we do have a very good safety record. Safety and liability are essentially two sides of the same coin. So if they're doing well in the safety aspects of it, they're also doing well in liability. But it has come to my attention that there are some potential loopholes that could be exploited, and I wanted to get those down in the policies so that those were understood by all people. One of the things is that should be a given, but which I think some people don't understand, that if you take unauthorized private individuals who are not county employees or officials or volunteers or who have been otherwise authorized by either the county manager, the sheriff, or risk and emergency management director, if you take those along in your vehicle on county business, even if it's your private vehicle that's been authorized to be taken on county business, or in a county vehicle, or at any other type of situation where you have them involved in, which is in county business, that they are not covered at all. They are not covered by county for injury. They're not they're not covered for liability either. So that not only puts the county at increased risk for liability, but also puts those individuals at extreme risk if it's a high risk situation. If we have our officials or employees who are going out in the field in high-risk situations that they know are high risk, they need to request assistance from the sheriff's office to provide escort to them to do that. They should not be bringing along unauthorized private individuals. My understanding is this is sometimes happening with regard to constables, where they're bringing along friends or family members in potentially high-risk situations that could result in an extremely bad situation. And as I said earlier, those individuals that are being brought along not only pose a potential liability risk to the county, they themselves would be at risk from injury and from liability, and they would not be covered by the county. So I felt that it was necessary to put these things down in writing. The other thing I would mention that we have here as part of this recommendation is we make it clear that any county volunteers need to be approved through the county procedures for volunteers. It's not something where an individual employee or official could just say, you're a county volunteer now, come and help, because they're not official county volunteer. So we've had those procedures for volunteers in place for a number of years. I felt like it was necessary that we need to have a formal volunteer policy in place in the policies and procedures manual that essentially formalizes those procedures. So we have developed a volunteer policy that we will be bringing to the board at the next meeting for your adoption. So, and I want to say further that all this language in here that I've put down, I've submitted to Arizona County Insurance Pool for their review, and they fully approve and support this language. So where I'm quoting things in here with regard to ASIP, it's with their approval. It's just not my opinion. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Byron. Do we have questions from board members? What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Lingenfelter, I'll motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes appear to have it. You have it so ordered. Item 63. Byron?
This is essentially just a continuation of what I talked about earlier, except it applies specifically to vehicles. And it makes it clear that, vehicles, private vehicles that our employees may use in county business needs to be approved by risk management prior to being utilized in that manner on county business. They have to submit a authorization form, private vehicle authorization form to risk for us to look at and approve. But essentially, once they're approved, we've actually put the same language in here that was related to county vehicles when you're taking individuals along with county vehicles for county business, that approved individuals that could ride along, those can be authorized by the county manager, the risk manager, or the sheriff. So we've actually made that clear in here. We've also made it clear that individual authorized private vehicles that are being taken by officials to conferences or meetings outside of the county do not have to be, they do not have to submit a form for that. They do not have to, you're not covered. You're not necessarily have to be covered by the county for that. That's not considered really county business. So there's a few other things in here for essentially we're cleanup in terms of use of vehicles. So I won't cover those in detail, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Thank you, Byron. We have questions from the board members. Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes appear to have it. You have it so ordered. Thank you, Byron. Item 64, Financial Services Director Morian.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. This item is at the request of the board in December. Chairman Lingenfelter, you had an item on the agenda discussing the need for the county to monitor ongoing spending on non-mandated services, and the board asked for us to come back with some ideas about how we can incorporate some mechanisms into the budget process each year that monitor that spending, monitor any expansion in the provision of services that are non-mandated. And so what we put before you today is basically two different methods of doing that. One, we've asked each department to provide 3 to 5 goals that align with that department's mission. And then additionally, we're bringing back asking each department and division to give a breakdown of mandated, essential, and discretionary services. And the intent behind this is that it's not going to be just a one-time deal where a department submits the data and nothing is done with it. The intent is that this will be an active discussion that takes place when each department meets with myself and the county manager during budget formulation. If there are significant changes or variations year over year, we'll be taking a look at those and getting down to the root of, was there an expansion in mandated services that was due to new legislation being passed? Is there some other extenuating factor that's feeding into that? And so the intent is to have it be part of the ongoing discussion without being overly administrative burdensome on the departments, but also providing enough flexibility that if new legislation is passed, if the economic conditions are changing, if individual circumstances within a single department are changing, there's enough flexibility in there to adjust to fit the circumstances and to meet the needs of the county and the departments. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Morian. Do we have questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Johnson.
I'm not understanding why you're asking the departments to give us mandated and unmandated services.
Chairman Johnson, so for instance, if a department gives us a breakdown this year being the first year that we're doing this, and then when we're looking at FY25 budget, we see that the amount of money that they are requesting to be budgeted towards those non-mandated services, if we see a 20% increase in a single department, we would want to look more closely at that and determine what is driving that increase, and see if there's opportunity maybe to either minimize an increase in services that are non-mandated or potentially come up with a change to their budget. It's just asking for additional justification, I suppose, and a closer look.
Will this be broken down somewhere where it's going to be easy for the board members to understand it, so that we have a page that says these are the unfunded mandates that the county has taken on, so that the board can look through it and say, we agree with some of these, we disagree with others? Or is it going to be, here's Public Works and I've got to filter through all the stuff they do to figure out what it is?
So as part of the budget books that are prepared for each one of the supervisors each year, on the program page for each individual department, you will see a breakdown between those three categories.
So we have to go through each page to put them all together. It's not going to come back to the board as just an item and say, okay, here's where all the unfunded mandates are before the budget, so the board can say, we want to continue these.
It's at the discretion of the board. If that is what the board wants to see, we'll do our best to meet that objective. I think that when you look at the budget book, you know, for instance, I included as backup just the finance department, which is a smaller department, but still you could see the overall budget and then break down all of the services we provide are mandated, so everything's going to fall under that first category. But you would be able to look on a department by department basis and see just where that breakdown, where the funds are going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop.
Luke, this is a little confusing. Are we trying to limit our non-mandated services? And if so, are we willing to say that publicly? Or, you know, most of the unmandated services are grant funded to begin with. So what's the end goal here, I guess is my question.
Supervisor Bishop, my understanding when the board requested us to bring back some monitoring mechanisms was that the board wanted to see a more detailed look at increase in spending on non-mandated services. If that was incorrectly understood by myself, we'd be happy to take another look at it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily misunderstood. It's just, you know, we've done this before. The former finance director put a lot of effort into it, and staff put effort into it, and the board did absolutely nothing with it. So here we are again. We have some different board members, and we're going to do the same thing again. I don't know. I just wonder out loud if this is worth the staff time and effort and the cost to do all of this research and present it to the board and have the board say, thank you, and not take any action. I mean, I don't understand the need for it, and I guess you're not explaining it to where I can understand it. What's different about what you're doing and what Coral Lloyd did?
Supervisor Bishop, the intent is just to have this be more of an active discussion each year. I can tell you from attending department budget meetings when I represented the treasurer's office, I cannot recall ever having our breakdown of those spending within those three categories in the budget. I can't recall being asked any questions about that, and so I think the intent is to not just gather the data as had been done previously, but to make it more of an active component of the budget formulation each year.
And this is typically discussed during the budget process anyway, correct?
That has not been my experience when I was representing the treasurer's office, Supervisor Bishop.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager Elters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. In a nutshell, this is staff responding to the board directive to come back with this information. We do not, at the staff level, envision this to drive the budget discussions. We will continue to meet with every department as we have done during my tenure, and my understanding is that practice had been going on prior to me being here. What I've learned is that this similar information to what we're presenting to you today was gathered and included but served no specific purpose. So it was discontinued somewhere between 2019, 2020, or 2021. I honestly do not remember the exact date. Being as it may, though, the board directed staff to come back with this. So we're coming back to you with this. What we hope for it to be is a dynamic, lively, accurate discussion as we go through to be able to answer the question to you, the board, whether these services that are provided, that are part of our budget, whether they are mandated, discretionary, or otherwise. It's for tracking purposes. If the board decides to act on it one way or the other, obviously that would be at the discretion of the board. What we're trying to do is have the information tracked and available to you for that purpose.
Chairman Lingenfelter.
Supervisor Angus.
Luke, how much more work is this for your department?
It's Supervisor Angus. It is a significant amount of work, not just for finance. It's asking every department to provide more data when they submit their budget packages.
But once it's done once, right, when you divide it up into these buckets or whatever, it will be easier going forward. It's just beginning it is going to be where most of the work is going to be.
Yes, the first year would be the most labor intensive. Then any additional, moving forward, it would just be, unless there has been something specific that changes the allocation of funding within a department between those three categories, it would literally just be looking at a year-over-year variance and what's driving those variances.
I think it's a great idea. The more information we get, the better. And, we keep hearing that we might be hitting some bad financial times. And I think that information will be very important going forward. I know we've talked about it before and boards change. And this is sort of a good compromise between doing what was asked 5 years ago, whenever, and going forward. So I kind of like this.
Thank you, Luke. I'm going to jump in. I think that, first of all, I appreciate you and your staff and everybody that's been a part of putting this back to the board. It's only my opinion, but if you're doing something the same way you were maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, the same way you are today, you're probably not an excellent operating organization in all aspects anymore. So I think what this accomplishes is a couple of different things. It first, importantly, helps our citizens that we all serve to understand all of our county functions, the mission of all of our county departments and the divisions and their goals. And secondly, I think that it's really important that it implements year-over-year performance metrics. I've been a part of this process as a board member for a couple of years now, and as a management tool, I've never seen any year-over-year performance metrics to say, hey, here's what our goals are this year, here's what we hope to accomplish, and then the next fiscal year you kind of reflect back on those and you see if what you're doing is actually making a difference, or do you need to make some course changes? I mean, we've heard a lot of speakers at every board meeting that say, government just keeps expanding and we're not really asking the foundational question, are they really achieving what they're supposed to be achieving with this program or this service? So I think that helps to try to keep that better on track. So I just want to say thank you for that. I'll be supporting this.
You're welcome, Chairman.
Are there any other comments from board members? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. 1 second. So what would be the motion? Because the recommended motion is just discussion. What would be the motion on this?
Attorney Esplin, do you have any?
Implement?
I think, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson, excuse me.
I think what the director has proposed is the way he wants to do it, or he suggested, is to have it done by departments. I thought that was kind of confusing, but if we go ahead and approve today, if that's the way he's going to do it, so you have to look through each one of them. 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
I didn't understand that.
Luke, that's the way that this is going. I know that in the current fiscal year budget preparations, at least at our District 1 office, we've seen the different forms where we've been asked to mandate, breakdown services, add performance measures. Are all departments being asked or requested to do that this year on an individual basis?
That is correct, Chairman Lingenfelter.
And Chairman Lingenfelter, I can give you a proposed motion if you wish.
Proceed.
Approve the Finance Department's recommended new mechanisms for the review of county mandated programs and services as part of the annual budget process.
Supervisor Angus?
Okay, what he said.
For that motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Gould?
I'm not sure that the 3 classifications actually get at what we're trying to get at. It would be better if we broke down the services that are mandated by the state or the federal government, the services that are done by the out of property taxes that are not essential, and the third category is now slipping me. Because some of these things are commingled. Because there's certain things that we have to do by state statute. And that's the only thing that we have to do. Everything else is discretionary. Some of those things are grant funded and some of those things are property tax funded, since we're essentially property tax funded. To me, that should be the 3 breakdowns. Because that's what I want to know. Are we doing something because the state government tells us we have to do it? Are we doing something that's discretionary out of sale or property taxes, or we do something that's discretionary out of grant funding?
Supervisor Gould, if I could address that. So it would be difficult to draw a clear line between what is being funded with property taxes, because the county does receive a significant portion of revenue from the state shared revenues. And so there's not, for general funded departments, at least, there's not a good way of saying, unless you just do a pro rata of we have this percentage of property tax and this percentage that's coming from the state, which it's all taxpayer money, but there's not it's not like we fund one service with property tax money and another one with state shared sales tax revenue. Grants obviously are different, but that would be problematic from county finance perspective.
Since Mr. Chairman, since that money goes into the state share revenue and the property tax money go into one pot, essentially?
That would be correct, Chairman Gould. Those are 2 of the primary revenue sources for any general funded departments.
Yeah, I think that's still at least I don't know, this may not be the feeling of the board, but what I'm concerned about is what we do that we don't have to do, that somebody else doesn't pay us to do.
I can give you an example, just if you were to look at, a breakdown of mandated services for a particular department, because I think this is what you're asking for, you're going to see state statutes listed. State statute A is directing us or mandating us to provide this service. You may see those coming from ARS, you may see it coming from state administrative code, you may see a department that is listing that there's a federal mandate for a certain service that they're providing that may be tied to grant funding, but they should be breaking it down with a listing of here's the mandate, here's the service that is provided, and depending upon the department, there may be different sources from where those mandates are coming. Does that answer your question at all?
I don't think the federals can mandate we do anything that they don't give us money to do.
With grants, that's where I would expect to see that.
Yeah, they have no authority over us to do anything with general fund money. So they have to give us the money. If they tell us we have to do something, then they have to give us the money to do it.
Chairman Golden, then I would point back to my example of just you have ARS, you have state administrative codes, you have different sources of state, I guess, regulation that is directing us.
So what you're telling me is it's my preference is too complicated to make anybody be able to understand it.
Chairman Gold, what I'm saying is that I believe that we're already meeting that when we request that the specific mandate be pointed out in the data that the departments submit as part of their budget packages, whether that be the state constitution, whether that be ARS, whether that be something else from the state.
Mr. Chairman.
I think Supervisor Angus, you had a comment.
Right. You're already kind of doing this, right? When you sent out to the departments, they know this, they're already getting this information, or has this not been implemented at all?
Supervisor Angus, when Finance sent out the request for budget packages to the departments several weeks ago, and those were due back this past Friday, one of the things that we requested was a breakdown between those three categories, as well as a list of 3 to 5 goals for each department.
So this year, we're really kind of moving towards doing this, and I think it's a great start. And I think when we see that information, this budget, it might, we might see that there's something else that we want to do, or you may see there's something else. But I do think this is a good start, and I thank you for doing all the work.
Thank you, Supervisor Angus.
Luke, to follow up on Supervisor Gould's point, it really falls into mandated versus non-mandated, and then non-mandated. I mean, we can get into, as an individual supervisor, if we had a concern or a question about a program or a service, we could contact the department, we could contact you guys to dial in a little bit further about the specific revenue sources that support that program. Is that accurate?
Chairman Lingerfelter, yes, you could certainly contact, the departments would be the best source of that information, as they know what they're spending the money on better than anyone else and what their goals and their mission is.
Well, as a business owner, I mean, your budget is a tool, especially as policymakers. Your budget needs to be your tool. If you're just getting numbers and you don't use what your budget is telling you, then you're not fully utilizing your budget. I mean, it's supposed to be a tool to help you to manage and to get the mission done. So I just think this makes that whole process in our budget as a living document even stronger. So, County Manager Elters, you had a comment?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I was just going to say our general fund consists of property tax and state shared taxes and some miscellaneous revenues that are fairly insignificant. We have no control over the state shared taxes, so that brings it down to our property tax. Our general fund goes to funding the budget that the board approves. Staff does not really get into dictating within the budget what services will or will not be provided. Where we have new services, we usually, or changes, we usually include those in a program or a new initiative, and we highlight those during the board budget workshop. So to that end, I guess my only fear, if there is one, is that to implement what Supervisor Gould is suggesting would become really complicated, to the point that you're on multiple tiers trying to identify what I would call and what we have called for years, the color of the money, as to whether it's in prior life, whether it was federal dollar and state dollar, and whether it would go for construction or right-of-way and that sort of thing. It could become really complicated to track it on the type of services and where the money within the general fund is coming from. Right now, we recognize we have grants that go to specific services. Again, it's all part of the budget. And then we have the general fund that funds these mandated services along with anything else that the board approves within the budget. So I'm just, we understand what you're asking us. We've undertaken this program that we're presenting to you in the hopes that we keep it, we make it dynamic, we make it as a communication tool with you, the board, to answer questions. But it could really, as you heard, it is some additional work, but it could become really complicated if we get too many, if we add too many tiers to it. That's all.
Thank you, County Manager. I think that Supervisor Gould's points are valid, and I think that this proposal actually gets us over halfway there, if not more so. And then as individual supervisors, we can take that new information and dial down further if we feel that that's necessary. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Discussion?
Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you. Luke, are you going to be coming back and asking for another employer or two to help implement this? The reason I'm asking is your staff is really kind of stressed right now, it appears. I don't know if you're shorthanded, but with the budget process going on now, they're a little stressed over there.
Chairman Bishop.
You can probably speak to that better than me, but what I'm hearing is it's complicated already.
Chairman Bishop, I appreciate that. This is always a very stressful time of year for finance. There's a lot going on, not just budget related, but we're in the middle of the county's annual audits, end of year processes and tax documents for payroll as well. We're not currently planning on asking for additional staff in the FY24 budget.
Okay, well, if you can assure me that for the rest of this this calendar year, you won't ask for new employees to help you implement this, I'll go ahead and support it and give it a chance. Can you do that?
Chairman Bishop, I'm not planning on putting any new initiatives for additional FTEs in finances budget this year.
That's a way to get around it verbally. I won't be.
That is the only mechanism we have for adding staff, so I guess that's my guarantee.
So you won't be adding staff this next calendar year?
Not as part of FY24 budget. It won't be part of our package.
Calendar year.
Yes.
Yes, you won't be adding any new.
Yes, Supervisor Bishop.
You could have been an attorney.
Well, thank you.
I just think this could be done during the normal budget process, and I think we're making a lot out of nothing. I agree we should watch our non-mandated programs, but right now things are going well. Our budget is balanced. Hopefully we won't go into a recession, but none of us can tell that. And at that time, I think we will have to tighten our belts. But thank you, Luke.
You're welcome, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you. For that motion, do we have a second? I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Ayes appear to have it. You have it, so ordered. Thank you, Director Morian. Item 65, Dr. Kingsley, Public Health.
Good morning, Chair Lingenfelter and board members. I'm just coming before the board to continue this process of evaluation and overall health of our community in regards to COVID-19. Previously, during the last year, the board asked for monthly data reports or monthly updates on COVID-19 until the end of the year. And so bringing that back to the board if to continue that, or providing more so a recommendation of moving forward for reporting COVID-19 and surveillance for our community. In discussion with the Board of Health, as well as reviewing the data reports, as this has progressed onward and where we're at. And many of the questions that we asked at the beginning of the pandemic have been answered. And will it become seasonal? Will it become this and XYZ? So what we see currently with COVID-19 is with the evolution of many of our other illnesses. There's at-home tests that individuals take. They result in positive, but they don't have severe consequences or symptoms that drive them to the hospital, so they remain home, and that's never reported. So we're seeing that similar to many of the other respiratory diseases. And then also because of immunizations or as well as past infections, the symptoms are not as severe within our county members and residents. So again, they might not even take an at-home test, but they're able to weather it like a common cold or a flu, and then return back to work, and symptoms vary between those individuals. Current practices are similar again to reviewing with any airborne respiratory illness from influenza to RSV. And then looking at the data report, we know that in conferring with one of our board members, Dr. Nguyen, that we did have a COVID spike during December, but you do not see that represented in the data. And so what is the best form for us to continue forward? And so just continued transitioning our surveillance of COVID-19 similar to influenza, RSV, which we have similar hurdles where there are challenges with those diseases in the sense that same thing, somebody gets the flu, even if a lot of times they go to their primary physician, it's not reported. And so we have a hard time actually in having the accuracy of how many people actually have it. So we go off hospitalization and a general community census. So when it transitions for us, we will follow the normal reporting. Anytime that it is officially reported to a laboratory through a hospital, we have that data. Those that are not reported and we have to try to surveillance within the community, that's with our healthcare partners within our community, our hospitals and our healthcare providers, especially our hospitals that provide us information. Hey, we are seeing an uptick in our ICUs and our NICUs, and we're at this level of capacity. And we respond to that. And then the regular side which is responsive, the proactive side is the usual prevention methods that we have in education. So coming before the board just for moving forward, at your discretion, is that appropriate for you that we move forward with that, or would you like to continue to receiving some type of specialized update for COVID-19?
Thank you, Dr. Kingsley. Questions from the board? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we cease the specialized reporting of COVID-19.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do you have it? So
Thank
ordered.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Kingsley. Item 66, County Manager Elters.
Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you. If you recall, I briefed you on this item during the county manager's report at the last board meeting. This pertains to the county land, the 15 acres that Mojave County owns within the Mojave Valley Irrigation and Drainage District. The board approved the request to terminate the lease for irrigation, and we have options. As I shared with you before, those options, we do have 4 different options. One is to reprocure and issue a new lease. The second one is to participate in the Colorado River Extraordinary Conservation Intentionally Created Surplus Implementation Program that the district is interested in. Third is to consider designating and selling this allocated water for domestic and municipal use. And fourth is to do nothing, which we do not recommend, because then if the land sits for longer than 2-year period without being irrigated, we lose that allocation. Given the drought that the Southwest as a whole is dealing with and the implication to Arizona and the plan that you referred to earlier with the 7 states, and understanding that the Bureau of Reclamation, in an attempt to mitigate the impact of this drought, is offering this intentional created surplus, and it appears to be in Mojave County's best interest to show good faith effort to reflect that we are as interested as anyone else, and we're taking every measure to conserve. We have more than 10 acres, so we do qualify. We have about 70 acre feet of water allocated to those acreages. Should the board chooses to participate, if we do participate, it would be part of the overall FVIDD program. The district as a total are offering just under 13,000 acre feet, more like 12,800, and ours would be a part of it. The county would be reimbursed. I'll back up a step. If the district proceed with what the district is discussing with the Bureau of Reclamation, it would be a 3-year program, and with that guarantee for 3 years, the reimbursement rate would be $400 per acre foot. If they only do 1 year, it's $330, and if they do 2 years, it's $365. It's really not about the money, but it is about everybody having skin in the game and participating in this program. The water will be conserved. It will be retained in the lake above the dam, and that is our recommendation to you, the board, to consider this option, and I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Sam. Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Manager, so if we participated in the intentional surplus program, we do not lose our water allotment, even if it goes longer than 2 years?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, really excellent question, and the answer is yes, we will not. The district has exercised its authority along those lines, and have incorporated that provision and that waiver, so we would not lose our water allocation if we participate in the program.
Since this is 15 acres inside of a field that's farmed, do we know what the other owners of the other acreage inside that block are planning to do?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, I think if I understand your question correctly, those that are offering to fallow their land, and just from memory, the overall acreage is somewhere around, or the total amount of water allocated is somewhere around 42,000 acre feet. 13, forgive me, about 29 or 30,000 of that is set aside specifically for farmland and irrigation. The rest, 12 or 13,000, is for municipal and domestic uses. Of that 30,000 acre feet that is for ag, 12,800 is going to be set aside for this conservation. So my understanding, Supervisor Gould, is the only requirement is that you take some measure to ensure that tumbleweed and noxious weed does not overtake the land, and the district will be inspecting those acreages that are supposed to be fallowed. to meet those conditions, but that's about the extent of any conditions or follow-up or requirement that I'm aware of.
That's good information, but that wasn't really my question. I probably didn't make myself clear. We own a 15-acre portion of, I believe, is a 127-acre farm field. And there, I believe, was 6 other owners in various plots in that farm field.
Mr. Chairman.
Because as I recall, our 15 is in the middle of a field. I'm just curious what the rest of the people that own pieces of that particular 127-acre, if you had any knowledge what they were planning to do.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, your question will send me to the drawing board or to the research field. I try to be prepared. I was unaware that these acres are a part or within a 127 acre block or parcel. I thought that there are 15 acres, they're standalone. They're not, they're 14 plus, not even quite 15 acres. So I was really unaware of what you just shared with me. We'll be more than happy to go back and find out what the remaining property owners in that block intend to do. My understanding and what I'm communicating to you is the MVIDD staff has indicated to us that we, as the county owner of those acres, do qualify. They've included us in the submittal. They can always pull us out if the board decides to go in a different direction, but it would be hard to include us in after the fact, and I know they're negotiating as we speak and meeting with the Bureau of Reclamation. So I'm happy to go back and get you an answer. I do not know the answer to your question.
Thank you. I support going into the
ICS.
Yeah, the ICS. I think that's for us, I think that's the best thing we can do. And it's just kind of the whole thing is a strange situation. I'm not even sure we have a right of way to get to our 15 acres. It's just it was a strange deal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
This for the county manager. These water rights you're talking about, they're MVIDD's water rights, correct? Because they have the allotment of water. MVIDD got the allotment on the river. And so we, as a county, if this water, if we don't store it or use it, it goes back to MVIDD. It doesn't go anywhere else, I don't believe, does it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, you are absolutely right. The entire allocation of water is to the district. This is a legally established district, and so our allocation comes from MVIDD, and we have a contract. In fact, what was attached to your backup is a sample of that contract from FY22. They don't quite have one yet reflecting the current program and terms, but again, we did not want to miss the window to act, so in due time, a current contract will be presented to you, but you're absolutely right. The water allocations to these acres, to Mojave County, comes from MVIDD, and if we do not act and it's sit for over 2 years, those will revert back to the district and not go away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Chairman Lingenfelter, if I may jump in just real quick. I was intrigued by Supervisor Gould's question, but I'm looking at the map. I don't think you may have been looking at the older map. There was some older maps, and then they divided it up, and I believe that we do have access, and it's not in the middle of the field. It's its own field, and there is access to it. I get that there's other fields that are next to it that are also farming and stuff, but I think technically what we could do is we could put up a fence around our area, you know, and say, no, this is our area, but we don't do that. It's just, we're farming it, and then the neighbor next to us is also farming and stuff and so on.
I don't think, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
I don't think that there's a boundary. It's in a field, and that was why we were part of, gosh, what did they call it? It was
a consortium. I remember that
consortium, because we were all upset about the use of the word consortium, and I believe that it was, we had to make a deal with the farmer that farmed the surrounding areas, because there was no way for him to tell on whose land he was farming. So he's making a pass cutting alfalfa. He's going from Bob Jones to Phil Smith to us to somebody else as he makes a pass across that field in certain places. Well, I may have misunderstood the entire thing, but I don't know.
No, I don't want to go back to the discussion about the consortium. I remember that. It was a lively discussion. But I'm just looking at it, and I think just, you know, this is a bird's eye view, an aerial view of it. It looks like it's, you know, one farmer had been farming multiple areas, but I think technically we could put up a fence, and we could, and it's adjacent, or it's parallel to King Street, so it looks like we can have access to it.
Okay.
So that part we can, but the rest of it, the surrounding area, you know, you look directly to the west of it, it's being farmed, and it looks like it's just kind of one continuous large area.
Yeah, it looks like one farm field.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments from the board members?
I'll make a motion.
Before you make the motion, we have one request to speak form submitted by Mr. Wayne Hollins. You want to come up, please? Thank you.
Oh, Wayne Hollins, Golden Valley. So we get water from the water district to irrigate the farm. What happens to the water that falls out of the sky onto the land? And if we fallow it, that means we'll get weeds growing, which we'll have to pay for to get sprayed, which is not good for the soil, which will kill the soil, which they've already did that in the past from what I read. So if they get an inch of rain on that 15 acres, that's about 410,000 gallons that fall on there. So we get an additional water from the irrigation district in addition to that. And if we don't use it, then that water goes away, but we still get the 410,000 every time we get an inch of rain on it. That could possibly run off of it because it'll no longer be able to infiltrate into the ground because there's no plants growing. There's no carbon being put into the ground by the living plants. So, again, what do we do with the water and where's it going? How much water do we need to grow stuff? And if we don't get the water, we still got the land, but then we fallow it and we don't get the land, but we still own the 15 acres, but we don't get water from the water district, and we only get the water that falls on it. I don't know.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The water that falls on the field's not going to go anywhere because those fields are laser leveled fields. So what it's either going to soak in or evaporate. And the only vegetation, there's probably no vegetation on there currently now. So whatever comes up is going to be whatever can grow with the amount of rainfall that falls on that land.
Thank you, Supervisor Gould. Supervisor Bishop.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Mojave County's participation in the Colorado River ICS implementation program and authorize the county manager to execute all the documents related and to include the landowner 500 plus plan agreement with MVIDD.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item 67, County Manager Elters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members once again. Item number 67 pertains to high ground contract renewal. The Board of Supervisors back in 2017 based on the sense that we were outnumbered and underrepresented at the legislature, had a vision and acted on it to hire a firm to help have a seat at the table and represent Mojave County. High Ground was hired. They've been on board since then. Their contract is up for renewal. Given that we are now in a legislative session, and as you know and heard, many bills are being introduced, have been introduced. Quite a few of them pertain to county issues in general and water issues specifically. We believe Mojave County needs to continue to have representation, to have a seat at the table and a voice to assist us with that. We are proposing to the board to renew this contract, tweak it by eliminating the legal piece, taking that out of it. The original contract included Riley Carlock and Applewhite, which is now Clark Hill. So we're proposing to take the legal aspect of it out, and then when we do need legal services, we can pursue those separately instead of paying for them in the current setup. The basis for the renewal would be for High Ground to continue to monitor and oppose legislation intended to transfer Colorado River water away from the river communities. This has been a hot topic. It has not gone away. Unfortunately, it continues to have legs, and we need to stay vigilant to pursue education and support legislation designated to provide local government the tools needed to manage groundwater in rural Arizona. This is another area that has been a significant focus of this county. Champion the county's effort with other legislation issues at the Capitol, at the Arizona Capitol, pursue and support new legislation and amendment to existing legislations to offer and provide water infrastructure, finance authority, grant funds with limited or no local match. What they came out with initially was just loans, not even a grant. And then lastly is to have the person that we work with the most from High Ground be here in person and present to the board twice during the year on issues, concerns, successes, setbacks, and answer any questions the board members may have. And with that, staff recommends renewal of this contract and reduction from $12,000 per month to $10,000 per month, reflecting the removal of that legal services aspect of it. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Sam. Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
I have not supported this since the beginning. The board, we have spent $981,916.94 on this fiasco that we've had. Now, some of that, a few hundred's been to the attorneys, which, was incorrect that we had to do. But if you can show me one piece of legislation that's been passed since we've been paying $12,000 a month, I'd be very surprised. We've got $12,000 a month for which we get no documentation. We just get a bill for $12,000 a month. So it's not like, oh, I talked to Senator Gould or one of the other people and tried to work this out. We've had 3 legislatures that can't get any legislation through. We spend $12,000 a month. Now, the staff is coming back, and to me, it seems they're trying to change the contract And while it goes down $2,000, which isn't a big deal, it seems they want to make them a lobbying firm for us. Well, I think that has to be gone out to a bid. We can't just hire somebody without having a competitive bid in that. I don't know. I've been against it to begin with. I think we've wasted our money, and more power to High Ground for taking $750,000 from us. But I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other comments? Supervisor Bishop?
I just wanted to comment that I think High Ground has done a good job for Mojave County. It's nice to have the best water attorneys in the state working for us, but I think now that Supervisor Lingenfelter has come up to speed on water issues, if you look at his information that he puts out, he's very knowledgeable. He's doing an excellent job. I too am beginning to question whether or not we need this type of expertise all the time. Maybe we could contract when we have particular cases that need to go to court and have legal representation. I don't know. I know we've got the INA now. It's being challenged, which I don't think is going to go anywhere, but that legal representation will be done by the ADWR attorneys. And we do have some cases that are currently pending, but you know, I'm beginning to wonder and agree somewhat with Supervisor Johnson.
Supervisor, other comments? Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Chairman Lingenfelter, you are the face now of Mojave County Water. What is the value to you going forward and being our representative out there on water issues?
Thank you for the question. So I got involved in this area's water issues, this county, back when I was vice mayor of Kingman. At that time, I was more interested in obviously the groundwater issue of this region surrounding Kingman, but also the former Mayor Miles and myself, we went down when the Arizona Department of Water Resources was having their hearings on that Greenstone to Queen Creek transfer. We went down to Bullhead to show support. You mess with one of the 3 cities that we have, you're going to mess with all of them. And I think that was important to do that. Since then, and if I remember correctly, when we first started, we had Patrick Cunningham, which I think that was a large part why we went with High Ground, because of his unique understanding and experience, the fact that he was an attorney, and he was quite the asset. I think everybody would agree that Patrick was quite the asset for Mojave County in a number of different respects. He is retired. They brought on another attorney who lasted a very short period of time. He went to, I believe it was the Arizona Senate, to be a Senate attorney. At that point, High Ground being they secured Nick Ponder, who we're currently working with, who is not an attorney. He's formerly from the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. Nick is a sharp guy. He does a good job on the advocacy part. I think it's important, and it has been important, to have somebody down there to be a voice for Mojave County, since we're not down there all the time. I think that it not only has it benefited us, but I think it's benefited our representatives and our senator at the state level. If they need some help with an issue, that they're able to reach out through us as their partner. With that vertical integration between our state representatives and senator and our county board to get information and some help on some stuff that they may need too. I think it's important this year when you consider the fact that in both the Arizona House and the Arizona Senate, we have over 50% freshmen that don't really have a good understanding or grasp of either our Colorado River challenges or our groundwater challenges in rural. Some of them may not even understand fully what an active management area is or an irrigation on expansion area is and why those are necessary. So I think that there's a need for some sort of a presence, and it doesn't have to just be water. Candidly, with Nick not being an attorney, I'm not sure if the services are worth $10,000 a month. And I think that Supervisor Johnson may have a point where if it's going to turn into more of a broader role, perhaps a I would leave that to our procurement professional and our county manager, but perhaps request for proposals process, or at the very least, a best and final offer process, where we would say, is 10,000 the best you can do with not bringing an attorney to the table? But I do think that it's necessary, well, not necessary, but advisable, I would say, to have a presence down there representing us. Those are my thoughts. Supervisor Bishop.
One other point that I wanted to make, which is significant. Supervisor Lingenfelter is our face of water, and he has an alternate in case something happens and he can't make it to meetings. The alternate was me to begin with. I was not kept informed, so had Supervisor Lingenfelter needed me to sit in on a committee meeting or travel down to the legislation, I wouldn't have been current. So I gave that up, and Supervisor Johnson took it, and I don't know if you were communicated with any better, but I know that you just recently gave that up to Supervisor Gold, and I don't know if he's been kept informed of water issues, but I just don't feel like the entire board is being kept informed, other than what we read in the newspapers and quotes from the chairman, and you know, that's where I'm getting my information, is from the newspaper, which is not a good place to get all your information. So Supervisor Johnson, what was your experience with High Ground and communications as the alternate?
I never had any communication from them at all. Not at all. And that's my point. We've spent, you know, including the attorneys, $1 million, and we haven't had one victory. And well, as they say, the definition of insanity is continue to do the same thing and not receive any results. I mean, we had, the INA was from this board submitting a letter. It bothers me too if we're saying that, not that they shouldn't be, but if we're paying these people and we have no report as to what they've done, because we all know the legislature shuts down, you know, half the year. ADWR is still around, but when we get no report saying we met with this legislature and we're working on this or doing that, and even at that, after this many years without getting one victory, you know, even a little victory somewhere, because we all know how lobbyists are. They go to the senators or their legislatures and say, look, I just need this to go through because I got to keep this contract. We couldn't even get that. We couldn't even get it with our 3 people pushing it all the time. So that's why I'm saying we should look at a different way to try to do this.
Okay, Supervisor Gold, have you had any communications with?
You'd go through the chair. I appreciate it.
Supervisor Lingenfelter, Supervisor Gold.
Thank you.
Have you had any communications at all?
Not from High Ground. I did talk to the lobbyist once when we had the water meeting here when ADWR was here.
Okay, and I apologize to the chair for not going through you.
That's just to keep an orderly meeting. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
I think, you know, we've done a pretty good job. We've secured the INA. Hopefully it'll survive the challenge. We've knocked out the Wallapai water settlement, which they've worked on for the last 12 years. We got that done last year. We keep our advocacy and our education efforts going. We're seeing some positive results in the media from that. But I think we need everybody that we can get because it's not an easy fight. County Manager Elters, you had a comment.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I am not trying to justify or defend. I just want to share with you what I know, which is High Ground has been on board since the board brought them on board, which I believe 2017. They are familiar with our concerns, needs, and issues. We had Patrick Cunningham come up and present to the board a couple of times a year to keep you in the loop during whether it's at the end of legislative sessions or when there were a warrant for him to come up. We are prepared to have Nick, our current contact, come up and brief you as well. I just want to remind you that things happen really quickly during this time in the legislative session. Chairman Lingenfelter and I have a call with Nick every single week. He facilitates much for us in the way of meetings with legislatures and the governor's office on issues important to us. In fact, our Development Services Director is meeting with our representative today through an effort from Nick to bring us together to look at this WUFA and the projects that are up for consideration. So a lot is happening behind the scenes. It changes constantly. There are times when meetings are called within a few hours where it's not even feasible for us to get down there. We try to attend as many as we can of these meetings virtually, but having somebody down there is pretty valuable. Other counties do have lobbyists to advance their concerns and needs. Whether we do the renewal and stay with high ground or go a different direction, I respect your decision and will follow suit. I just wanted you to know that they've been at the table with us. They do understand our issues, and if we bring somebody else on board, we would go through the same process that we went with them to get them up to speed. And finally, I'll just end with, we did do a memo of sole sourcing that explains and addresses this item that is in front of you. And I'll pause here and leave it in your capable hands.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Yeah, I disagree with the recollection of the county manager. I believe the only time that the high ground that I could recall coming and speak to us is when I requested it in 21. I don't believe in 22 they showed up at all. And I'm a little concerned if county staff is using this organization to do lobbying without the approval of the board to set up meetings and other things. There's a reason we have openness with the public here to know what we're doing, and we hired these people to do water-related issues, and it could be if I was them, I'd say, well, I could have got your water stuff through if you didn't have me working on WIFA and other stuff too. So those are all concerns to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that we need a lobbyist in the Capitol. When I was a senator, 22 of the 30 districts had a portion of Maricopa County in their district. There was only a handful of us that did not at the time. The legislators that are down there, as Supervisor Angus mentioned in a report, you're looking at 1,400 bills. So they have their plate full. And so it's good to have somebody that's paid specifically to watch water items for us. If we want to shop for a new lobbyist, we can shop for a new lobbyist, but I think it's important that we do have a presence at the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, I support this item as well. I'm wondering, Sam, this is a question to you. Would it be possible to issue high ground, back in procurement, we used to call it a best and final offer, a BAFO, to see if $10,000 a month is the best that they can do, or if they can come down a little more than that?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I will gladly do so if that's the direction of the board.
Supervisor Angus, I think you're looking for.
Yeah, and well, what I heard during this discussion too is the lack of reporting on what they're doing. It sounds like the county manager kind of knows. Maybe it would help the board if we had some kind of report. And again, when someone sends you a bill, don't they have to tell you how they work their hours? I mean, especially lawyers. I mean, I haven't had that many experiences with lawyers, but it may be that could be worked in as well, that we want a more of a reporting as to where the money is going, like to justify the $10,000.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Manager, when does the contract expire?
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Gould, I do not remember, honestly. I will have to look that up and bring it right back to you. I don't remember off the top of my head. January of this year.
January was last month.
January.
My point being, it's a bad time to be switching lobbyists. The legislature's in session. The first 3 months of the legislature is when most of the work gets done. After that, you end up having small group meetings and sitting around doing nothing, waiting for things to happen. So it's probably a bad time to switch. You ought to make these contracts renew sometime that the legislature's out of session if their job is to lobby the legislature for us. You don't want to be switching in the middle of a legislative session.
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Gould, thank you for that comment. I thought we were being proactive and acting on it before it has expired. If indeed it was January, then that means we've missed it. But I will tell you, and I'll take responsibility. I personally wanted to make sure we got through that whole INA, and they were supportive to us in that process as far as information and so on. I wanted to make sure we got through that before, and thinking that we had enough time on this contract. So I'll take the responsibility for that, and we'll verify the actual expiration date for you.
Mr. Chairman.
But your point is well taken. Thank you.
If you watch, most of those lobbyists are hustling new clients and hustling each other's clients in the summertime. I think that's how their season goes. They work in the first 6 months of the year on legislative issues and hustling customers the other 6 months. Thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson?
I have a question. If this contract is expired, is this item correct in the way it's worded? Mr. Attorney?
Let me look at the wording of it. It says,
Attorney Esmond, does it go month to month if it doesn't renew in the time period allotted?
all that I have on the backup is the current one that intended to sign. I don't have the previous one, but I imagine it could be month to month. Many times contracts will go month to month. If the parties are receiving something and we're paying for it, then yeah, we can agree to a month to month, even though that it's elapsed. Similar to a lease. This isn't a lease, obviously, but many times a contract, if you continue to provide the services and you continue to pay for it, then it'll continue to go month to month until somebody acts on it.
I see our procurement director. Tara, you want to come down? Thank you.
Chairman and members of the board, sorry for my confusion. I'm actually looking at our backup document related to the sole source determination. Our initial agreement was approved July of 2017, but then we've done multiple iterations and changes when the attorneys were moved around. And so I've also got board approval in June of 2022 that was making it the engagement agreement with Clark Hill in Mojave County specifically for legal advice. So the not good answer is I'm not exactly sure what the engagement with High Ground specifically goes to, but just based on it having been approved in June, my gut reaction is that we're probably on a fiscal year basis with them, and I can look a little bit further. But the initial engagement with High Ground and was it Clark Hill?
It was
Riley, Clark, Carlock, and Applewhite. That was originally approved July of 2017, and then we've done annual renewals since then. So it's probably effective through July of this year.
Thank you, Tara.
I'd like to look at that, though, before we definitively say that's the case.
Me too. I want to look at it more thoroughly.
I'd like to.
Right. I'd make a motion to continue this, Mr. Chairman, to the next meeting.
Second. That was a motion to continue to next meeting, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we have a second? All right, you've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item 68, Manager Elters. Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman.
I've had a request that we take just a 5-minute break. So we're going to reconvene.
Johnson.
11, let's just say 11:55.
This is the contract. Agreement is effective from July 1 to June 30th. And will continue past date as a month-to-month contract until terminated by either party. So if we're still going by that, we're on a month-to-month, and then, but we can terminate it at any time.
So how they usually write those things up for you?
All depends. Every contract is
Governmental,
We left off with item 68, County Manager's Office.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this item is for information only, and it is being provided by Barbara Spoonhour, our Administrative Services Director. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisors. I wanted to provide you with an update on the Lake Havasu expansion for the TV district. I believe there should be a map coming up. Thank you. We have been working with our contractor, WECOM, and our engineers, Dutrell, London, and Rackley, to develop a solution for the poor reception in the Lake Havasu area. The tan area is where we currently have service. And outside of that, it's been, from what I understand, from years of just being type of spotty or no service at all. We had a plan to build a new facility. However, the FCC is no longer allowing for new facilities to be built. So this was a minor road bump for us. So we have explored and determined that if we replace our existing antennas and purchase stronger transmitters for the Goat Hill location, that it will boost the signal and be somewhat comparative to actually building a new facility in that area. So WECOM used a loaner transmitter and our existing antennas and ran tests the week of January 6th, and the tests showed that there is actually an increase in coverage. As you can see on the map, WECOM had tested in 10 different locations. Many of the sites had a 16-foot antenna. The green areas on the map have a significantly stronger signal, and the pink area also receives a signal. However, these areas may require just a slightly higher antenna, maybe 20 feet or so, and also may need to use an amplifier to get a consistent signal. Again, this is much better than not having signal or super spotty signal in those areas. Again, unfortunately, anyone who is using an inside antenna or the bunny ears, they're not going to see an improvement in their service. This does require an outside antenna. We are in the process of submitting our construction permit application to the FCC this month. The goal is to get our new purchase equipment and installed and to begin transmitting by the end of June this year, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Barbara. Questions from the board?
Chairman Lingenfelter.
Supervisor Bishop.
May I speak? Barbara, I just wanted to thank the TV district and the workers that went out there and rescued the tower that was nearly ready to collapse. I got to see pictures of that, and it was really treacherous and amazing that they were able to save that. So along with that and the improvements, I think all is good for Lake Havasu for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor. Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
Do we need a motion?
Need a motion? No, there's no motion. Okay. Item 69, County Manager's Office.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this item is a continuation from the last board meeting. It was presented to you regarding the ARPA funds and NACO's desire to establish a national center to advance for the western states. This item was continued. The board wanted more information and asked for a list of what other counties in Arizona have done. This item has, since the board meeting continued, this item has been presented at different platforms and settings. The latest list that we have for other counties show 8 of the Arizona counties approving it, 2 opposing it, and 1 with a note that it may reconsider. 4 are pending, and as of Friday, we checked, and I can tell you that Apache County has it on the agenda with recommendation to support. So it's in a way still pending, but it's indicating support for it. The other counties on the list of pending that you have in front of you are still pending. So I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Sam. Questions from the board? Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. I think I was the one who continued it. I wanted more information, and I did. When I was down at CSA and met with people, there were a lot of people from the past who I worked with when we first talked about public lands, when I first got on the board, when we wanted the transfer of public lands, and I heard a pretty good earful, both pro and con. You know, I'm still kind of on the fence. I still want to know exactly what we're going to get for it. And the fact Yavapai, they have said no, but they may reconsider at some point. I still want to know what we're going to get from it. I just have some bad experience with public lands and sort of I know it's kind of needed. I know after all these years, I've been here for 10 years, you still talk about how the people from the East don't understand public lands. That is always amazing to me. And I think that there are other organizations that do this too, but I would like to hear, if that's okay, Chairman, from Supervisor Johnson, who has his finger on the pulse of this, I think, more than I do.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what Angus. Talked back to D.C. to try to get a better feel to see how the senators and congressmen, felt about this, and if it would be a benefit to them. And I'm like the rest of you, I don't like to spend a lot of money, and they seem to think that it would be a good thing to have this building back there with all the public land so that they could take people to show them, because people like show and tell and that sort of thing. The amount of money coming in, which was always mentioned to me, was we get millions of dollars a year in pill payments, and this is a small portion they're asking you to fund so that they have something back in D.C. so that they could lobby for us to continue to get our pill money. That's basically what I've been told.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Bishop.
So I could support this if I thought we were going to get dollar for dollar back. I mean, if this goes forward and enables us to get more PILT money or SRS money to justify our participation, I see no harm in doing that, but I don't think that comes with a guarantee. So I'm not sure on this either.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
We won't be getting any additional money in PILT. There's a formula that's set up, and it goes by population and area, and Mojave County is one of the largest ones for receiving funds that there is out there compared to, everybody else. We are one of the top dogs, so we won't be getting any more money, so this will kind of help keep our funds where they should be if we go through with it. It'll assist with it. I mean, it's not going to guarantee it.
Supervisor. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Are you saying that we're the largest? It would be somewhat like a smack in the face if we said no, but we're the ones who can benefit probably the most from it?
Pretty much is what they're telling me.
Yeah. I think almost for that alone, because we are. If you were a legislature and you're going to this public lands and some of the biggest beneficiaries aren't involved in this organization, then you would probably, but I do want some reporting. I do want to know what they do. And have you gotten anything like that, Sam?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, the letter that we received through CSA that lays out, and it's really not in any specific details, it's evolving, it's the vision that they've laid out for it. And, for whatever it's worth, I know the two county supervisors from Arizona that represents CSA on the Western Interstate Region Board, and those are Supervisor Horstman out of Coconino and Supervisor Lunt, have said that they support it, and that if any other board members have questions, that they would be happy to talk to. They've spoken up in support for it. So, but what we have, Supervisor Angus, is more of the vision than really the details.
Will information come through CSA, do you think? Because they're very good at getting information.
My understanding is that they will annually develop a plan or a program that will come to both NACO and WIR. And then through them, it would be disseminated to the other supervisors and CSA. So yes, I would say that will happen, and it's in that hierarchy.
Okay, well, I'm ready to make a motion if discussion.
Supervisor Gould, did you have any comments as well? No. Okay. I only had a couple of questions, if I might, Sam. Like my fellow supervisors, I'm a little confused exactly how it's going to work. When you have so many counties, those that participate, how are they going to select things to work on? How's the voting going to work? How are they going to select what to pursue and what not to pursue? There's no shortage of issues out there when it comes to public lands.
Chairman Linkenfelter and board members, indeed. And some of those have been answered. The one that has not been answered is what happens for those counties that do not participate, because we have been told repeatedly the intent here is to have this to be a voluntary program. So funds provided by the counties would go into an account that will then, like an endowment, it's the dividends from that will run the center. The center will work under the oversight of NACO, and WIR will have members on this board, and they will have annual opportunities where discussions are had and items prioritized as to what is pursued and considered. And my understanding, again, in the information that has been shared with us, that this is really to promote the public lands, counties, and their needs and their concerns, whether it's water, forest, and so on. So it's really not established, and the idea is a board made with representation from NACO and WIR will dictate to them what they do.
Thank you, Sam. And just to follow up on that, and it may be an unnecessary question, but this will be an annual appropriation from all of the counties that are going to vote to voluntarily participate?
Mr. Chairman and board members, no. It is intended to be once, and it's 2 payments, and it's equivalent to 1% of the most recent ARPA funds that we got to public land counties. So we received $12 million. 1% of that is the 120. It would be made in 2 payments, Chairman. One, 60,000 each. One would be in FY23, one would be in FY24, and that would be it. It's not an ongoing.
And then as far as you know, that they're not, this new association or whatever, it wouldn't come back on the counties and ask for additional appropriations, to your knowledge? I mean, we all know how government works, but.
Mr. Chairman, board members, they have stated it so clearly, I can't honestly imagine that they would, and obviously it's county boards of supervisors that will decide whether to entertain any additional request or not, but they're saying it's an endowment, and that's how they will operate this center with small staff.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus.
I have one other concern. You know, we talk about public lands, we have our ideas about what we should do, but there's other, even public lands counties that don't see eye to eye with us. And that's kind of my fear. You have this bureaucracy back in Washington. They're hiring from that employee pool. How do we, I mean, is there a board? What is the oversight on this, that we're getting actually the information that we want out? I think that's a big concern.
I think that's kind of my concern as well as Supervisor Bishop or excuse me, not Bishop, Angus has stated, back east, there can be a lot of, I think people know as wokeness that can go into this public land stuff, which is kind of what I'm worried about.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, and board members, I'm trying to only share with you what I have heard and read and know. I don't want to misrepresent anything. So to that end, your concerns are very real and genuine. The way I understand it, based on the letter and what they shared with us, is there will be a board that will oversee this center, and that board will have members from NACO and from WIR. So that will have a seat at the table, and that will be engaged in deciding what is considered.
Okay, and it's one time. So one time, how are they going to maintain going forward? Unless through NACO?
Chairman Linkenfelter, Supervisor Angus, again, my understanding of what was shared with us, $1.5 billion from ARPA funds came to the counties that are eligible for the public lands. So 1% of that is $15 million. The idea for the endowment is the $15 million then dividends would fund this center, and there would be no more funding. That's what they've told us, and to communicate with you. That's what we do.
Any other comments from the board? Supervisor Angus.
I'll make a motion. Did you want to make a motion?
I was going to second your motion. I thought you already
okay.
made
I'm
the
going to
motion.
make a motion that that we participate in this public lands, but make sure that we have full reporting back on the activities. And just personally, I'd like Supervisor Johnson to be on the board. But that's just me.
Second your motion.
If I could just ask for clarification, are you also directing that staff to make the necessary budget adjustment for fiscal year 2023 and program funds for the fiscal year 2024?
Okay, do you want me to say the whole thing over again?
Just that second part.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
And I second the motion with both those items.
All right, you've heard that motion in second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item 70, County Manager's Office.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I promise I think this is my last item on the agenda today. You've heard enough from me. As you know, Byron Stewart, our Risk and Emergency Management Director, notified me, and I in turn notified the board that he intended to retire. So while he's done a great job, and I want to acknowledge him publicly and know that we don't replace him, but we have to fill the position. With that in mind, I use the same approach that I use for other department heads' position. I asked the panel to come together of capable and talented department heads who work a lot with the Risk and Emergency Management Director. They have interviewed a number of candidates, and we collectively, they shortlisted to me. I interviewed as well, and I have a collective recommendation to the board to appoint Joe Dorner as the Risk and Emergency Management Director. Joe certainly possesses the qualification, both the experience and the education, the credential. Joe is local, has been in Mojave County most, if not all, of his life. He understands emergency management well. He has served in multiple roles and capacities as fire chief and deputy fire chief. He's not going anywhere. He's local, who understand and knows many of the people that he would be interacting with. So I am very pleased to recommend to you, the board, to hire Joe Dorner as the next emergency management and risk director for Mojave County. He is here in the audience if you would like to hear from him or ask him any question. I'm pleased to bring this recommendation to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Mr. Dorner, I see you back there. It's certainly optional. Would you like to come down and address the board? Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Lingenfelter and board members, I'll come down here. I didn't really prepare anything, but if you got any questions, I'll certainly be willing to answer any of them for you.
Supervisor Bishop.
Mr. Dorner, I'm wondering, with your salary, what are you going to do with the last 80 cents annually?
I don't know, you know those things always, they figure themselves out.
I know you're a valuable man. I've known you as long as you've been in Kingman, probably my whole life. So I think you're worth the salary, but the 80 cents has me baffled. Welcome.
Very good. Well, those are all in the numbers, though, aren't they? So, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the recommendation that Mr. Eltiers has made forward, as well as the screening group that went forward, and so I'll leave that in your hands.
We're fortunate to have you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure of the board.
I make a motion that we approve, minus the 80 cents. I'm joking.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Item 71, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have Ryan explain what we're doing here.
So this is a project that has been submitted by the Desert Hills Fire District, and we have two representatives from the fire district here. I don't want to put them on the spot, but they could answer questions if you have. But the district has a need for upgrading communications, specifically radios. And as I put in the memo there, even using borrowed radios, that's how bad it is there. And I mean, in terms of what they need for upgrades, the radios that they do have do not work, do not quite, what's the word? They don't quite interface with the other agencies in the area, and so they can do it, but it just takes a lot of work to try to interface with them. And so really to improve response times, to ensure that people are getting the appropriate safety that they need, and make sure that they can function and work properly, they desperately need these new radios. The ARPA funds are appropriate for these. I just, I did the analysis looking through the different ARPA rules, and clearly they fall within there. But just as a kind of double check to make sure things were on the up and up, I just did a quick Google search, and a number of different fire agencies are making similar requests with ARPA funds. So it's not just Mojave County. These are being requested and being funded by ARPA funds throughout the United States. So our recommendation is to approve the request.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. This is a very good project. I don't know if people are aware, but fire districts really got the short end of the stick from all of this money that came in after COVID. First responders, you'd think they'd be on top of the list, but they weren't. They need some good lobbyists, is what they need, the fire districts. And I'll be coming forward with a similar project for Bullhead City. We have a lot of fire districts, and what I've learned is kind of shocking, like what Ryan was saying. So I think this is a great project. Thank you, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Supervisor. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Gould.
I move that item 71 be adopted.
Second.
For that motion, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 72, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan, can you explain what we're doing here?
And so this is the second half of the procedure that we've kind of adopted here, where the board initially approves the project. The project here is with the Golden Shore Civic Association. This is to make upgrades to the lighting there, the facility there, and any maintenance and repairs to the building that they need to make, up to $20,000. This is now the funding agreement that we are asking the board to approve. Really, the Golden Shores Community Center is very much the kind of the glue that binds that community there. There's a lot of different associations and groups and bodies that meet there on a regular basis, including the Meals on Wheels program that the county administers to the residents in that area. So this is really another good project, and we're asking the board to accept the funding agreement that we have with them.
Thank you, Attorney Esplin. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
I move that item 72 be adopted.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. Item 73, discussion and possible action. A, accept the resignation of Bullhead City Constable Mike Hamilton. And B, establish a timeline for selecting and appointing a new Bullhead City Constable. Or C, discuss other options regarding the duties performed by the Bullhead City Constable for the rest of the current team being left vacant by Hamilton's retirement. It's a pleasure of the board.
Chairman Lingenfelter,
Supervisor Bishop.
I will make a motion that we accept the resignation of Mike Hamilton.
You've heard that motion?
Second.
For that motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it so ordered.
Chairman Lingenfelter,
Supervisor Bishop.
I would like to make a motion that we open the process and accept letters of interest for a replacement constable.
Second.
For that motion second, just a point of clarification, is there a deadline?
Chairman Lingenfelter, just sorry for the interruption. Typically, when we've done this, we do set a timeline for publication for it. Usually, we request resumes to come to the clerk of the board so that I can distribute them to the board. So we set that first deadline, and then we set a deadline for you to review them. We have a meeting set so you can interview people. So we at least need to set a deadline for publication at this point, to publicize and a deadline for receiving resumes if this is the way the board will go.
I will amend my motion if you recommend a deadline that would be appropriate.
I believe in the past we've done anywhere from 7 to 14 days, so it's at the discretion of the board, but that way we can put it out to the public. They know exactly when they need to reply.
Okay, I will amend my motion to include a 14-day deadline.
You've heard that motion. You've heard that motion in second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. I think that's the only action we needed. I don't think we have to do, let me ask this question to the county attorney's office if I could. So he has now retired. Do we need to act on C regarding what to do regarding the current duties of that vacant spot?
I don't think so. I don't, unless you feel like there's a need, but I don't think there is.
It's a pleasure of the board. Does the board?
And Chairman Lingenfelter, his retirement is not effective until April 4th.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, great. So no further action is required. Thank you. All right, final item, item 74, discussion and possible action, approve the adoption of Board of Supervisors District Wrap-Up Concept, a new public information concept and tool to further connect Mojave County supervisors to the public they serve. This is under me. I'd like to ask County Manager Elters if you want to introduce and present this item. Originally it was presented a little different to me. What I'm asking is taking that concept and then after every board meeting, on a rotating basis, one of our district supervisors would be able to sit down with Roger Galloway and do sort of just a 10-minute brief wrap-up, things that are important to that supervisor, things that are going on in their district, things that some awards or recognitions that they want to point out. Not that the media is doing a bad job, but just another resource to pick up and spotlight and mention some of those things that maybe the media is not picking up. So. Did you have any other discussion points?
No, Mr. Chairman, board members. This was a concept or an idea that was explored at the last board meeting, where an interview would take place with the chairman, and it would be wrap up about the board meeting on a couple of items that were noteworthy of discussion, and the idea was that it could be informational, it could be educational, or both. So we conducted the one session. We posted it on YouTube as suggested from the beginning. We did receive feedback. The feedback was mixed, and it really compelled us to suggest that this come to the board for discussion and direction to staff as to whether the board wishes to continue, terminate, or tweak it in such a way, whatever the will of the board. This was just an idea that was explored, and it's in front of you for consideration.
Thanks. Yeah, this idea was presented to me by Sam and Roger. Is just another way to utilize our public information office. It sounded like a good idea, so I just rolled with it. But it really is more appropriate to be on a rotating basis with every single one of our county supervisors after every board meeting. If they don't want to do it, then that's on them, and it goes to the next supervisor. But it would just keep going, continuing that rotation between our districts. What's the will of the board?
Chairman Lingenfelter?
Supervisor Angus.
I think it's a good idea. We've talked about this in some iteration over the last 10 years. It seems kind of harmless. I know Supervisor Johnson had some issues about promoting, other than informational, because it is a fine line, between promoting or campaigning and then just giving information out. So I think it's up to each supervisor to watch themselves on that, but I think it's a fine idea, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Supervisor Bishop?
I disagree. I think we've had many conversations, public conversations with the board members, and all of the board members at one time or another are in the minutes saying that how they think the public information officer should be utilized. And we were all in agreement that there wouldn't be specific supervisor names involved in press releases, and that I think initially Roger was supposed to put out a newsletter that Supervisor Angus felt pretty strong about, that other counties had done. If you remember early on, and Supervisor Lingenfelter in the minutes stated that Supervisor Lingenfelter, I'll just read it, stated, "That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I certainly don't think the PI office should be used for any sort of political posturing or maneuvering by a district office." And actually, this one broadcast that was put out without any of our knowledge, it was explained that this was just items that were discussed at the last agenda. But on that, there was an agenda item that was continued to this meeting that a supervisor commented about and kind of could have been looked at as leading the witness per se as to how we should vote when this comes to the board today, which it did. And then the supervisor gave a little summary of what's going on with the water issues, which was not on the agenda. So I think this is opening a bucket of worms that maybe the Attorney General's office will be watching each broadcast to see that we're not violating the open meeting laws. And I think it's an opportunity for each supervisor, when they have their turn on this, is to bring attention to their district and maybe their upcoming election to kind of gain support that they're doing things for the county that's being done as a board rather than by the individual supervisor. And I just think it's very misleading. And I think because we videotape our meetings and it's out there for the public to either attend in person or watch on video, I don't know that they really need to be told what it was that they just watched. Anyway, I'm opposed to this totally.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson.
My comments are like they've always been on this. I think it just opens us up to diversity among the board. Like at the end of this meeting, if I was to talk about the mistakes that other board members made on voting on that one contract, I could, but I mean, I just think those things will lead to problems that we don't need. I mean, we all have the ability to, especially now with our phones, to make videos to put up on whatever media we want to do. I just think it's going to cause problems because there's always, maybe I don't think I'm crossing the line, but Supervisor Gould thinks I crossed the line or somebody else, and it does cause problems. That's all.
Thank you, Supervisor. Other comments? I personally, I'll step in. I don't think that it's a bad idea. I think all of us could probably regulate our comments. I mean, if I was on the minority side of one issue, I would certainly say, even if I mention it at all, that I fully support the will of the entire board, which is what all of us need to do. We debate issues vigorously, and then we take a vote, and then it goes one way, and then you kind of go to the next thing, and that's just how government works. There's a lot of awards. There's a lot of other things that go on in the county that the media may not capture, and you know, I just thought it sounded like a good way to kind of report to the citizens that we serve, and obviously give credit to the full board when we mention things. That's just my opinion. I think it gets into a sort of a strange situation and territory that I've never really understand when you have individual county supervisors looking over their shoulder to see exactly what the other county supervisors are doing to try to keep them in check. I mean, that's not really what we're here for. We're here to get the work done. And that's kind of what I was going to use this for, and I would assume others would use that for too, but that's just my opinion. Supervisor Bishop.
Just one last comment. I think if we're not going to use the public information officer for what we intended to use him for, if we're going to put out our own newsletters, our own broadcasts, our own news releases, why are we paying the salary of a public information officer? So, Roger, I don't mean this personally, but if we're going to go forward with this, let's do away with the PIO and we'll just all be our own representative and get the news out in our individual ways. Like we have Facebook, we have radio, we have video, we can do a podcast, or we can let the public watch the meetings like we've been doing, and then they're not subject to one person's interpretation.
If I could just be clear, the discussion today is not about any kind of employment or any termination of any employment. That's not on the table, and that's not on agendas for discussion, just so that we're aware of that.
Thank you for that reminder.
No harm, no foul to me. I mean, if it's something that we have to look at in a couple of years, that's fine. But what's the pleasure of the board?
Do we not have a motion on I make a motion that...
Do we have a motion?
Okay.
Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay.
What was your motion?
To approve.
I'll second.
You've heard that motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Nay.
Ayes appear to have it, do have it so ordered. And that is our last meeting. or our last item. Thank you.
Oh, I can't wait for my turn.
Hey, you can't cancel all the meetings.